Welcome, everyone. Good afternoon, and thank you so much for joining Special Education Legal Fund's first school showcase of the year, featuring Villa Maria School in Stamford. My name is Christine Lai. I'm the Executive Director and co-founder of Special Education Legal Fund, and I'm really, really pleased to be moderating this great panel this afternoon. For those of you who aren't familiar with us, bear with me for my 30-second commercial. Special Education Legal Fund is a nonprofit organization headquartered in Connecticut that was founded in 2018 to provide resources, knowledge, and support to families in need with children in the special education system. Since 2018, we have provided over $800,000 in grants to over 200 families in 70 school districts in Connecticut and Westchester County through the Legal Assistance Program, which is our attorney grants program, and the Advocacy Support Program, which is our advocacy program. These two programs, the legal assistance and the advocacy support, are both currently open and accepting applications. The legal assistance program, as I said, is for attorneys, provides $6,000 in legal support from a qualified special education attorney. Advocacy support, $1,000 in advocacy support from a qualified non-attorney advocate. If you'd like to begin the application process, please visit our website. I will also put our website in the chat, but it is www.spedlegalfund.org, and then you would just go to apply for a grant. I wanted to draw attention to our upcoming webinar, which is next Wednesday evening, on supporting students with autism. And we're really excited about this one because it will feature some great advocates, attorneys, and school reps who will talk about, and educators who will talk about, different and interesting ways in which we as parents can support our children in the educational system. And that brings us to introductions for today's webinar. I'm really excited that we are kicking off this series with Villa Maria, particularly with my good friend, Bill DeHaven. Bill is currently the head of Villa Maria School, and he comes to Villa, really in the midst of the pandemic, I guess, with a wealth of experience in special education, in independent special education, as well as, on the public side. And Bill is a visionary educator. I am so pleased that he's going to talk about his vision for Villa and the supports and services that Villa provides for families. And I'm just thrilled to welcome Bill to this panel.
Christine, thanks for having us.
Yeah. Next up is Elise Brody. Elise has been at Villa Maria for 4 years and joined Bill from Winston Prep in New York, which is a school that I know well and have a deep amount of fondness for. Elise is the assistant head of school and admissions director, and she's going to talk to us about all things Villa, about the Villa student, about who thrives at Villa, and the process of bringing your student into the Villa Maria community. So welcome, Elise.
Thanks, Christine.
And finally, I'm so excited to welcome Joanne Sabato. A lot of schools don't have what Joanne is, the PPT and CSE Administrator. And if you are a family that has ever sat in a annual meeting or a PPT meeting or a CSE meeting with your school district, and particularly from the standpoint of being at an approved or non-approved special education school, Joanne is a godsend and a lifesaver for those families, helping them navigate that process, holding their hand, helping them understand it, and also helping coordinate with the school staff at the placement school, as well as with the school team in the district, for a collaborative and productive relationship between the district, the school, and the family. So I'm really, really excited to welcome Joanne to the panel.
Thank you, Christine.
Because this wouldn't be a webinar without a disclaimer, this webinar panel is presented for informational purposes only. This is intended as a resource for families who are navigating the special education system in Connecticut or New York. It is not intended to provide legal support, advice, or assistance to any particular individual, nor is it intended to replace the advice and counsel of a qualified special education attorney. Families in need of legal advice, support, or assistance should contact a special education attorney licensed to practice in Connecticut, New York, or their state of residence to discuss the specific needs of their individual student. This webinar should not be construed as an endorsement by Special Education Legal Fund or any of its representatives of any of the participating attorneys, advocates, or other professionals in the panel, nor should it be construed as an endorsement of any school or school representative invited to appear on this panel. A final note, for those of you who are parents who are on the webinar this evening, please refrain from posing questions in the chat that have identifying characteristics of you or your child or your school district or the school they are currently attending. If you'd like to anonymously submit questions, please email me at Christine, Christine, at spedlegalfund.org. I will also put that into the chat. And finally, I had the opportunity to visit Villa Maria recently, and I just wanted to show you a little, a little taste, a little snippet of my time at Villa, a week or so ago. I was really happy to get back on campus, as it's a place that I love to visit. Enjoy. All right. And thank you everyone for joining us this afternoon. I'd like to start this discussion off if each of you, Bill, Elise, and Joanne, could talk to me a little bit about your path and how you ended up at Villa Maria.
You want me to start? I
Sure.
guess I'll start.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I'll pass it off. Thank you. First, thank you very much. I'm sad the music didn't go with the little tour. I was all that was the best part for me.
Oh no. Oh
I didn't
no,
hear
I'm
it.
gonna
I
have to
didn't come
work
to
that
a
out
message.
work out my technical
But it
issue
was,
in the redo. But yeah, I'm sorry
but
about that. The
it was
music's so
no.
cute.
It was great. So, for those of you who we invite you to come and see it in person, but that would give you a little snippet of who we are.
And we'll play the music in the background while you visit.
Yeah. But welcome everybody. I'm Bill DeHaven. This is year 4 for me at Villa. I started my career actually in Trenton, New Jersey, in 1989. And sometimes when I say that out loud, I don't believe I'm as old as that. I went from Trenton to working as a New York City public school teacher in special education. After 5 years, I took on, I was at Winston Prep in New York back when Winston Prep was just 58 kids. Now Winston Prep has grown tremendously. I left Winston Prep in 2020. Christine was right. So I spent 22 years there as both the assistant head and head of school. And I'm so happy to be at our little home here at Villa Maria, a place I'm so happy to spend this afternoon talking to you a little bit more about. And I did bring Elise Brody with me, so I'm going to pass it off to Elise.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Elise Brody. I'm the Director of Admissions and the Assistant Head of School here at Villa Maria. My background is as a speech and language pathologist. So I started my career working at a private practice and then moved to Winston, where Bill was as well in the city. So I was there. I started as a learning specialist and then moved into my role in admissions, and then came here where I'm still running admissions. So I'm meeting families and students on the way in and evaluating students' learning needs. And then as the assistant head of school, I'm helping work with teachers to support the students and follow their trajectory here, and make sure that the students have the supports that they need and helping to monitor their progress as well.
Great. Joanne?
So I'm Joanne Sabato. I am by training and at heart a speech language pathologist for well over 45 years. First, I was a direct care provider at that grew into a multidisciplinary, very large practice in New York. Then I moved into, after about 25 years of that, I moved more into school administration. And now I'm on my 5th year at Villa and very appreciative to actually be at this school because they've actually created a position for me that, as you said, Christine, doesn't really exist in a lot of other places. So, and it gives me the opportunity to really take all of the things that I've learned in my many different roles over the last 45 years and look through different lenses at the student, the family, create relationships with the districts, and really work to find what's really in the best interest of the child and help to advocate for that. So for that, I'm grateful every day.
Amazing. Thank you. So, Bill, because you've done this before with me, this is going to be a pretty casual, sort of free flowing dialogue. And so anybody who wants to answer, please, please jump in. So I'm going to pose this to all of you again, and whoever wants to answer can answer. Who is the Villa Maria student? What kind of student thrives at your school?
I can start. All of our students at Villa struggle with language in some capacity, whether that's decoding, comprehension, or social communication struggle. And a lot of our students struggle in more than one of those areas as well. All of our students need academic support, and they also often struggle with executive functioning and or social communication skills as well. So I think our program really supports students who need a well-rounded approach that's not just targeting one skill, but really looking at them as a whole, and supporting them academically, socially, and in terms of their executive functioning skills as well.
Perfect. Can you talk a little bit about the student population right now that you have and the types of, I'm thinking specifically about age ranges, grades, to the extent that, you have children grouped that way, and what types of learners are you supporting in this, at this particular time?
You can jump in.
Anyone?
So we're designed to be K-9. So we've had kids as young as kindergarten. This year we have 2 9th graders. The 9th grade is really a transition program. Hopefully it's going to grow into a larger transition program, but it is for our kids who have been with us and are looking for that next step and sometimes spend an extra year here before they go on to high school. But predominantly we are a K-8 school. This year in particular, we're 2nd through 9th grade. Our kids, our class size is 4. That's probably part of the magic that happens here at Villa, that we have such small class sizes. And then we're able to, in admissions, identify kids with similar learning needs so that we can put those 4 similar learners together in a classroom. So if it's social communication struggles that brought these children to Villa, we're able to outline and design a curriculum that teaches skills and gives our kids strategies to become better at that social communication or that comprehension or the executive functioning struggles, the decoding struggles, whatever those primary struggles are. And so we do our best in the admissions process to, rather than take in a group of 2nd graders or a group of 7th graders, take in a group of kids with similar needs.
Mhm.
Almost all of our classes now have 2 grades in them. There might be a second and third grade class and a third and fourth grade class. But then they're
As you
different.
group them by their learning profile or their,
Absolutely.
where they are, kind of ability-wise.
This year, we have a large number, for example, of 7th graders. So there are some 7th graders who are in a class that are primarily focusing on their executive functioning skills and another on the social communication skills.
Mhm.
And so they're with that particular group of kids. Their curriculum is designed to teach them the skills and give them the strategies that they need in order eventually to be independent. And that's how we kind of differentiate within our building.
Elise, do you want to add to that and maybe like kind of expand on the admissions process as well?
Sure. Yeah. So, the goal of our admissions process at Villa is to gain a better understanding of the students' learning needs. Tying into what Bill said, we're looking to find students who are a good fit for Villa and that we have the supports that they need to be successful.
Mhm.
And in addition to that, we also have to have that group that's a good fit. So, we are looking to see if we can meet the needs of the students. And then do we have a group of students in their age range
Mhm.
that's going to be a good fit for
Good
them so
peer
that they
group.
can learn cohesively as a group as well? Because that's really important to the success.
As well as having the social,
Exactly.
of that.
Yeah. And so we're looking, when we're making that determination, we're starting in the admissions process by looking at all of the evaluations that your child likely has. So whether that's a neuropsych or a psychological, we're looking at their IEP and really looking at their cognitive and their academic and their social skills. And that's where we start. So that's all part of the application. And then, if we're reviewing that and seeing if it looks like they could potentially be a good fit for Villa, we're going to have them come in for an interview. So during that interview process, I'm meeting with the student, taking a closer look at their academic skills. And there's a parent meeting at the same time where Bill meets with the family. And then if it seems like after meeting them, we could potentially have a group that's a good fit for them, then we have the student come in and spend a day. So spend a day in the classroom, really seeing how they work within that 4-person class size, how both for the student too, to get a sense of what it would be like to be in a classroom that size. And then based on that, we're able to make a determination about whether or not we'd be the right fit for them.
How do you, and this question is a little bit, more for, with Joanne in mind, can you talk a little bit about transitioning a student that's been accepted into Villa and how you build a plan for the student as well as integrate, supports and services that they might be used to receiving at their, at their home, district school? That's a long question. I apologize. Oh, Joanne, you're muted.
And it was a long question. You might have to
She's
give me the
paused.
last part again.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
So, well, it's honestly, the transition part starts with Elise, right?
Mhm.
Because she's the one that's done the admissions piece. She has probably one of the best understandings of the child. So before the child even enters the building, she's there working with the team, giving them information, sharing the anecdotal stuff in addition to what's in the file. Because I think the fresh eye observation is so important. And what a teacher may even see in one day, you want to bring that all together. So it starts with her. The teachers review the evaluations, they review the IEP, and it's pretty much a similar process, whether a child is directly district placed or parent placed, but under different situations or scenarios. And once the child comes in, we start to do some of our own formative evaluations, not really assessments, formative assessments, and work to get our own baselines, because those are then going to go into the new goals that we create so that then we could measure against our own baselines. And we have the teacher over the course of the first few weeks create something called the Student Learning and Support Plan, which initially gives an overview of the student's functioning, the student's academic, cognitive skills. It talks about their social interaction and we'll also talk about their adjustment to Villa.
Mhm.
So I just want to stop for one moment and maybe go off the question, because the minute the student steps into our building, for the most part, something changes. And the environment is usually, excuse me, so different than what they're coming to us because they've probably tried it at other places, at their school, at their home school, and it wasn't working.
Mhm.
So you've showed us a snapshot of our environment, but it really, and I know you couldn't take pictures with people in it, but it really has a very different feeling when you see the teachers, when you see the students. And because we're a small community, we're a small building, the environment alone can be impactful
Mhm.
for a student. So it just brings their anxiety level down.
Mhm.
They have people that are there for them, and it really is really truly the least restrictive environment for
Mhm.
them.
Well, that
And
goes
so,
to the heart of what, is important to know about our kids, about these kids, is that, when you have a plant in your house and it's not growing, you very rarely look at the plant and say, like, what is wrong with this plant? How can I get this plant to change so that it grows and it does the things that it's supposed to do? You look at the environment. You're like, something must be wrong with the soil, the light, it's not getting enough light, it's not getting water. Those are the things that go into whether or not something thrives. And I think that, what you're saying is, really, really encapsulates that. Bill, I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
no, I love the plant analogy, but I think I can bring it back to your question. I think that what we've begun to say is that Villa is the accommodation
Mhm.
so that we can do the remediation.
Mhm.
So what Joanne described is we can be all of those things so that our kids are ready and able to do the work they need to do to become independent learners.
Mhm.
And so an IEP is filled with all kinds of accommodations and ways to do things, and most of that's very much of a pull-out program. And at Villa, everything's designed to be pushed in and to be one cohesive community,
Mhm.
so that we can be, again, that accommodation. We are, as soon as you walk in, so that we can go in and teach those specific skills. And we're lucky because we are an APSEP, we are an approved private special education program. So if districts can, and about a third of our families are placed directly by the districts,
Mhm.
and then we're at 20 different districts throughout Connecticut and New York.
Mhm.
But importantly, very importantly, we're an independent school. And
Mhm.
so that we are able to, exactly what Joanne talked about, that SLSP is our own version of what an IEP is. An IEP is an individualized education plan, and it gets stuck in lots of other things during the process. Really thoughtful people try and create the best plan for it to work for a student in any public school classroom. And for lots of different reasons, that often doesn't work. And so you need Villa. So we need to think differently. And it's our take on that. So we can better understand the kid in our environment and then rewrite those goals and objectives that don't need pull out for speech or need pull out for counseling, because all that can be built in.
Can you touched on this in your comment just now, but can you talk a little bit for, people in the audience that might not be as familiar with what an approved special education program is, an APSEP? Anyone
So
can take that. And what it means. What does that mean for family?
what it means is that, we're state approved, which means that if your daughter is struggling in your local public school and you gather the team and they create an IEP and they do their very best to meet her needs, and you're like, it's still not working, I need something more, and you reconvene that PPT and you gather and you have another conversation, the district can decide to outplace your child to Villa Maria. So then they would directly pay us.
Mhm.
So our tuition is outrageous. I'll just say it. It's not an inexpensive education. None of this in special education is. But in those situations, a district has the ability to directly place a student
Mhm.
at Villa. Now, that may not happen. Districts don't love to do that. However, the fact that we are an approved program in the state allows districts to have trust in. And we have great relationships. Thanks to Joanne, really, we've got wonderful relationships with most of the districts that are sending kids to us. And so we're able to then negotiate, and they may not offer you 100% and transportation, but they may offer you 100% without transportation. There's some kind of negotiation for that process. And I think that the fact that we are an APSEP or an approved program allows districts to deal with you differently than if we were just an independent school.
Right. And I think that's a key to understanding, you know, the difference between an approved program and a non-approved program. Obviously, there are certain, you know, procedural, you know, things that you have to do in order to be an approved program. And I'm not meaning to skip over that, but, you know, for parents, the principal difference is the ability of the school team, including the parents, to place a child, to directly place a child at a PPT meeting into a school like Villa, which then would encompass the whole of the support for the child, including transportation and whatnot. I'm not going to go into all the different ways that, you know, outplacement can happen, because that is an entirely 2 or 3 or 4 webinars, but I wanted to touch on that, you know, for you all specifically, and you know, and bring that up as a point of reference. You know, I think that's part of the reason that, you know, Joanne is such a valuable asset. And, you know, Joanne, I'd love for you to talk a little bit more about how these relationships with school districts are managed while the student is at Villa.
Okay, so, and I also want to also get back to the SLSP, because there were a couple of other points there. But let me answer this question first. So the first thing I did when I came to Villa was reach out to the different, you know, chair people at the districts, and then invite them to come to see our school. And the children that they're placing, because a lot of times they haven't really met the student either. And I think, you know, when Bill talks about building relationships, I mean, they've come, Bill meets with them, Elise meets with them. And many times they have other students here besides the one that they've actually placed. They may have students here that are here on, what's the word I'm looking
Settlement,
for?
you know, on a private, you know, a parent placement.
That are on settlements. And so that's an important piece. Get to know them get to know us. And then always before a meeting, I will reach out to the district. I will reach out to the parents. If they have an advocate or an attorney, I reach out to them and I talk to them and really try to look at what is it that we're trying to accomplish? What is it the parents are trying to accomplish? What is it the district is trying to accomplish? And then what is it the child really needs? And then go from there. And I know it sounds crazy, but even though I work for a particular school, I really feel in many ways I'm really an objective participant, because who can really understand the needs of both, the needs of the family and the needs of the district, and really try to work, you know, a way to find an appropriate educational plan for the child. And that usually comes in an IEP. And many times that IEP is created for other programs. It's not created for our program. So when Bill was talking about push in, there's very little push in that you're going to find in a standard IEP, you know, that for a child that's been in a school district. But because our classes are so small, and because there is such an, Elise is going to talk further about our integrated services, but because our services are so integrated and we have so many team meetings and we've, you know, collaborate with the teachers, we don't have to do the same level of pull-out sessions to be able to accomplish and achieve the same goals and have that progress. Actually, we see more integration of the progress, more carryover into other settings than if a child is, you know, simply
because you're
out.
providing the services in a generalized setting, therefore making it easier for the child to then generalize that, you know, improvement, you know, across the board.
Right. So, I mean, there definitely are going to be cases and situations where we do need to pull a student out to do some speech and some OT, but we really are finding that. Yeah, and then when a teacher pushes in or a speech pathologist pushes in, there are so many different models that we can use. So one could be they're directly there working with the child, prompting the child, helping them in writing or helping them in reading. Another could be that speech pathologist actually takes over that class and does a vocabulary lesson for a social studies class, or a higher order language lesson for a reading class. So there are lots of different ways of facilitating that pushing, which, as I said, Elise will talk maybe further about the services and supports.
You want me to talk
Yeah,
about
go
it
ahead.
now?
Yeah, oh, go ahead.
Okay. Sorry. Yeah, so just to continue what Joanne's talking about, a big emphasis of our model is really providing what the students need within the classroom to allow them to be a full participant in the class and get all the benefits out of being in the classroom with their peers rather than pulled out continuously throughout the day to get something that's related to what they're supposed to be learning about in class. So one of the ways that we accomplish that is by our S.E.L.F class, which is our social emotional language learning class. So it's a little different than a traditional S.E.L.F. So that class is 4 times a week for all of our students, and it's built right into their schedule. It's not a pullout, and it's twice a week. It's taught by a speech and language pathologist. And twice a week, it's taught by a school counselor or a social worker. So it's explicit skill-based instruction to build skills and provide strategies for students on social communication, social problem solving, academic problem solving, social emotional learning. The goals of that class are specific to what the student needs, but it's a way that they're meeting. Every student is meeting with the speech and language pathologist twice a week and the social worker or school counselor twice a week at a minimum. That's our the basis of our program. And then if a student needs more support than that, then they can get pullouts in either small groups or meet individually with the speech and language pathologist or the school counselor. And then our occupational therapist also pushes into the classroom to provide sensory strategies and self-regulation tools. They work collaboratively with the teachers to individualize what a break looks like for a certain student, what tools can help them with just with their feeling dysregulated, what kind of tools can they use, what kind of strategies can they use, and then if they need more specific skill support, they can get pulled out by the occupational therapist as well. But our push is to have that, it's all very individualized to what every student needs.
Yeah.
And that pullout can ebb and flow because, so might pull them out to really help hone a skill that then we do want them to use in the classroom. So then they go and they push in to help. So we really feel that there's, we have a lot of ability to facilitate that. The other thing I wanted to add to what Elise was saying in terms of the groups, because there's a big focus for social emotional, but we also have, when we have the speech pathologist, her focus is using those concepts or those themes, but working on building vocabulary, helping a student work with following directions. It could be listening to stories, but that follow that theme. So they're working on receptive language, narrative language, being able to sequence a story. So again, we can take those specific goals that are laid out in their SLSP and then
realize them. That this sort of, for me, brings up another question, which is, how often do you, it's 2 questions, but I'll just ask one right now. How often do you, tweak or change a child's plan? And how does that process, what does that process entail?
I mean, it's continuous. We can tweak it whenever we need to. That's the beauty of being in such a small place. Going back to what Elise said, part of her role, a huge part of her role, is that meeting weekly with a team of teachers. And that team includes not just the classroom teachers, but the integrated services team too. And so if we're noticing someone meeting their goals and needing more of a push, we can make a change. If someone needs more remediation, we can then make a change. Often that happens at the big times when we're writing reports, when we're really realizing we're putting together all those formative assessments and really beginning to paint a picture. But we're talking about our kids every week together. And I think that that's important to be able to adapt in that way.
And the sort of the continuation of that question is, what kind of formalized communication do you have with families about the progress that their student is making? I always go back to my Winston experience, which was that weekly email of, from the focus instructor, who's sort of the architect of the, of the plan, and telling me what's happened during the week, and and what progress was made or not made, or stumbling blocks or whatever. What type of how does your communication, how does your communication with what does it look like for you?
So that's at Villa, that's a more written every week, and that's it's rotating it for, and I guess this is a good time to also talk about how our school is broken down. Our youngest students have one teacher all day long, with the exception of the S.E.L.F class that Elise talked about,
Yeah.
art, PE, music, or lunch and recess. So that they have one teacher, just as you would in most elementary schools.
Yeah.
That teacher would send you a weekly communication with all those updates that you just talked about. She's in direct communication with you weekly. Our upper elementary students have a 2-teacher team. So you and I could share, you have 4 students for maybe the reading and writing part. I have them for science and math. Maybe we both do writing, and we switch morning and afternoons. We would take turns doing that group. So you would have your 4 group kids and talk about the reading and writing, and that I would be talking about the science and math with the other group, and then we'd switch.
Rotate, yeah.
Most of the middle school is a 3-teacher team. So there's a reading and social studies teacher, a science and math teacher, and then a writing and study skills or executive functioning skills teacher. And so they sometimes rotate. So they each have a homeroom of 4 students, and then they rotate. Those students rotate to those 3 teachers. And so you'll hear weekly from someone on your team about everything that's going on. And then additionally, we write narrative reports 3 times a year, and we have 3 times a year, we have parent conferences.
Great. I had a question actually from the audience that I thought would be appropriate to to kind of pose here, and that sort of is a question of behavioral support in the classroom. And can you talk a little bit about how behavioral support is provided at at Villa Maria, and what it looks like in the context of your model?
It's a fantastic question, because a lot of our kids get frustrated when I can't learn the way that my friends do. And it looks a little bit different at Villa than it does at other places. And I think that, one, maybe this allows me to we begin our day together as a community in the gym. And in addition to me, one of our 7th or 8th graders is the host of that community meeting. And it's important to know that, I think, as we talk about behaviors, the importance of community here at Villa, and the importance of that meeting, because in addition to, we start with the pledge, and then we begin with our Villa commitment, which I won't recite for you here. It's on our website. But what it does, the first stanza, is pretty much outlines the expectations of every day. So we're not a school where there's school rules listed everywhere. Those expectations are what we expect our kids to do all day, every day. So we say it together every day. So that one of my favorites, and I borrowed this from another school district, but one of my favorites is let go and move on. And we hear our kids talk about letting go and moving on when there maybe is a dispute at recess. Oh, come on, Christine, I just need you to let go and move on. And so I bring this up because they are our expectations, and it is how we're leading our kids, and it's how they're treating each other. It's choose kindness. It starts with choosing kindness. And so that goes into the classroom. Now, having said that, those are wonderful, lofty expectations, right? Every school should feel that way. But our kids are our kids, and they're tweens and teens, and there's going to be social trauma. There's going to be a problem. I'm going to get frustrated. And how do we deal with that? To remember that our kids are together because we're about teaching specific skills. We're doing that within hopefully exciting and engaging content. But if I'm teaching you how to solve a social problem, I'm doing that with my whole group. It may be part of the reasons that we're together. is to help navigate and teach that social problem solving. So we're taking that time to do that together as a class. There is wonderful support. Whether I'm the go-to or we have a lower school social worker or a middle school guidance counselor who are also active in trying to process with the kids what's going on and why. Very importantly, we have a wonderful occupational therapist. And I'll be very honest that, in working with younger kids, she's been instrumental in my own understanding of sensory overload for so many of our kids who do get overloaded by sound, emotion, and really helping. This is where push-in works wonderfully well. Like there's so much that she can do individually with kids, but when she's pushing in and can help a student when they're feeling overwhelmed or feeling very frustrated, there is sensory overload, able to work with them in that moment, help them in that moment, and then go back and work with the teachers about, okay, when Christine's feeling overwhelmed, this is what the plan is. We can have a menu of options to work on. What does a break look like? What does a good sensory break look like? Instead of talking to kids about, well, my desk is filled with what we used to call fidgets. And I don't like the word fidget because that just implies that I'm fidgeting and I'm not paying attention. But is it a sensory tool to help me focus? So we call them focus tools. And I think that that language shift is important because it allows the kids to know that you do need something. And maybe and teaching the kids to understand that when I'm feeling overwhelmed and I'm feeling frustrated, what do I need to do? Because I don't want something just to happen when there's a behavior problem. I need our kids to better understand why it's happening, what happened before that may have caused that. And that's really hard to do in the moment. But if that's our plan and that's how it's designed, then we can all kind of work as a team to kind of get our kids there. Sorry, that was a long answer.
No, it's a good one. I mean, and I think it segues into, another question, which is, are there kids that you can't support, as we are on the behavioral,
Yes, I mean, the kids whose primary struggle is emotional and not academic.
Mhm.
They're the kids who we struggle with the most, and we can't provide that kind of support.
Mhm.
Kids whose sensory needs are so great that in a class of 4 to 1, they may need a 1-to-1 to help them.
Mhm.
Then that we're not going to be that place.
Mhm.
And that's sometimes very difficult for us to determine in a meeting during an admissions meeting. We may, Elise talked about the 1-day visit. We may have kids back for another visit.
Mhm.
We're very open and upfront with you about all of that during the whole admissions process.
Mhm.
You want and we want this to be a great fit.
Mhm.
So we'll talk about that. But in general, it is kids whose emotional profile is what the primary struggle is. That may get in the way of the academics.
Yeah.
A lot of our kids have academic struggles, then they have frustrations that look like behavior problems, and
But they're
helping us.
really about academic and, and learning
Absolutely.
challenges. Right.
Yeah.
And
Gotcha.
if I could just interrupt.
Yeah,
for a
absolutely.
second, because, you asked what brought us to the school, but what I want to say for myself is what keeps me here is, you mentioned Bill and he brought in Elise, who was amazing. And his vision, their vision together of really finding that right mix of students so that, because he has a vision for how children will learn, right? In this small environment with not a lot of pull out and separation. Well, you do need to have the right mix of students, and they've done an amazing job of really looking at that really carefully and honestly sometimes saying no to people that you really feel so bad that you have to say no to, but following through with that.
Mhm. How do you, continuing on the topic of students, but, what do your kids do, outside of academics, outside of class? Can you talk a little bit about, other activities that they have that you sponsor that develop community and that create that connection between, students? Because it's hard, I mean, I know this as a parent, who had a child attend a school like Villa's for a long time. It's hard coming in because it's not the same model as like, you start in kindergarten and you're with the same kids for, however many years, and then you move on to junior high school. It's a different model. It's a different thing entirely. Some of the kids are there for, short periods of time, some for longer. So how do you create that connection between the students and the family and just the community in general?
So there's many ways, and you're right. I say it all the time that your families don't move to North Stamford to send their kids to Villa. You know, so many of us move to neighborhoods to send our kids to specific schools or districts. You have that sense of community where people walk to school together, and we lose that. Again, we've got students from Hamden all the way to the Bronx, and so how do we establish that community? When after school becomes really hard, when those kids are bused from Hamden to the Bronx, and how do we do that? So we battled with that and decided we were going to start with lunch clubs. Today's Thursday. I could have taken you to the garden club, which is actually seating things indoors. Thursday is garden club. Thursday is also karaoke club. So there's silly, fun. There's a dance club. There's a yoga club. There's a mural club. A lot of these things are happening at lunchtime because after school becomes a little bit more complicated. But to your point, they're time for us to gather with one another, with kids, older kids that I may not know. The groups of 4 are together all day, and they're with a larger group of usually about 12. So it's a cohort of 12. But this allows our kids to kind of spread and get to know each other in a little bit different and share interest. And those clubs rotate. This spring we have, it's a board game club. There's the dance club and karaoke club and garden club are probably our most popular, but the other ones kind of ebb and flow, and they're just fun ways during the school day to get together. Our Parents Association has begun a wonderful thing this year. We're calling it Second Saturdays. So the second Saturday of every month, we've got an activity. In February, we had a Villa dance. We hadn't had a dance here in over 10 years.
How cute.
It was amazing. 2/3 of our families were here. So it wasn't what we're thinking about, that middle school dance that was awkward for everybody. We had an amazing DJ, but we had our second graders dancing with their families and their friends all the way up to our 9th graders. So we had little boys in shorts and kids in corsages. So we did,
Cute. Yeah.
but they were our kids, and it was an amazing afternoon. Again, 2/3 of our family. So while the kids were in the gym, the way that our cafeteria is just right across the way, and the parents were there. We have parents floated back in.
Yeah.
But it gives parents a chance on these weekend days to get together. January, we were ice skating.
Yeah.
We've done movie nights here. The Stamford Nature Center. We've done all kinds of Sky Zone, another big popular one. But those events allow us to get our families together on the weekends because, again, so many of our kids are here because of that social communication and that connection.
Yeah.
And even though Joanne and I might be really close at school, when my mom asked me what I want to do on the weekend, do you want to get together with Joanne? I'm like, no, that's okay. We may be talking while we're playing video games, but getting together on the weekend. And this kind of encourages that.
Right. And that's really lovely that it's a family activity,
Oh, after the dance, so many families went to get pizza and stuff together.
Yeah, that's so nice.
So, yeah.
And
then I'll do one more plug. For our parents too, because I want you to know that this is a community for you as well. I have monthly breakfast with Bill, so that's the first Friday of every month. There's usually a topic, but it allows us to get together because raising our kids is difficult, and it's not something we can easily sometimes talk to our siblings or our friends about because our experiences are unique. And sometimes it's just getting together to kind of share woes or share strategies or, oh my gosh, what do I do when? In a safe place. And we kind of do that. We do that once a month at least. Yeah.
And we have a talent show coming up next week.
Oh, wow.
And I cannot tell you, the parents last year were they were like, nowhere else would their child be able to do what they did and get up on a stage. And we actually allow the students, the person that's running it, to make videos so that in case they're too shy, they can go there and they'll show that. So, but the other piece I wanted to add to this is that there are times where I'm sitting at a meeting with a district and we're talking about how we can help to also integrate the child into the community that they live in, because Bill just said they don't all live close to Stamford.
Sure.
And also the goal is for them to help them transition at some point. You know, we help them transition in, but we want to also help them transition out when appropriate. So a lot of times we'll sit and collaborate with the district to see what kind of programs that they have, or sometimes they have suggestions for if they don't, you know, a community program that might be appropriate. So another piece of it.
That's great. That actually leads into, we have about 9 minutes left, and I want to respect everybody's time, during this, sort of lunchtime hour. And thank you all for joining us again. But can as we conclude, can the three of you talk about, the trajectory of a Villa student? Most of your students are going to come to you for a specific reason. They are not, necessarily going to stay with you for the whole of their, the time that you can serve them. So, can you, just discuss, how long an average student will stay at Villa, and when you start preparing that transition process to, transition to either back to the public school or to another, independent school, or, whatever. How do you transition students to the next step?
That's a nuanced question.
Yeah,
That I
again,
don't want
like
to feel
6
like that
questions in one.
Well,
Apologize.
no, it's because our kids are all different. And so if you are a first grader with executive functioning and decoding needs, our goal, it's been about 2 years before we get you back into district ready to go. You're learning to be a learner, all those executive functioning skills. All of our teachers here are trained in PAF. So if you haven't heard of PAF, it is one of the Orton Gillingham. It's just a systematic way of teaching decoding. So all of our teachers are trained in PAF, and so get you back on your feet. If you are all of our kids are wonderfully sweet and hardworking. And so they fly under the radar. And even though mom and dad know that there's a struggle and you've got wonderful teachers, you all of a sudden find yourself looking at middle school being like, this isn't going to work. And so a lot of our biggest entry is probably between 4th and 6th grade. And a lot of those guys will stay with us through the end. So I think that I can say that there's an average stay of 3 years, but if our kids are coming in 6th grade and staying us through 8th grade, but our younger ones, we transitioned. Last year, we graduated 10 students, but we mainstreamed 6. So, I mean, that was a pretty good ratio.
Yeah.
And it's just going to depend on the learning and the learning profile. One of the questions I just saw in the chat related was how many kids go on to high schools to get a standard high school diploma. Most of our kids last year went on, either they were back to district. A lot of our kids are going to Winston Prep and Norwalk. So they're going on to programs that do have a 4-year program. I will begin to sell slowly. The idea that we have at Villa is to create a high school program here, a life skills program that won't look like a standard high school, that it will not be for kids who are just looking to go off to a 4-year school, but really to continue to work on the academic skills here and more life skills, and then internships. And so, but most of our kids right now are. And if those kids aren't, then they're going off to their districts in more specific life skill based programs.
And how do you help with that transition process? If you're, how do you partner with students and families on that transition process, whether it be back to the district, high school, or by identifying another, independent school that might be appropriate, like a Winston or, a Marvelwood or whatever? How do you partner with families to do that?
The traditional model, when our kids graduate, our middle school guidance counselor also functions as our transitions coordinator with Joanne, so that we meet when families are in 7th grade to begin to talk about what high school will look like. And so we begin those conversations. If they're looking to go back to district, Joanne is helping navigate that, and what does the transition plan look like. Christine has been out looking at other programs, and so we can recommend those schools. But when our kids are wanting to transition earlier than that, that's a conversation they can begin with Elise. They often begin it with the classroom teachers. Sometimes I know that in 2 specific cases, we're continuing these conversations. We began these transition conversations actually in our November parent conferences. For kids who have been here for a year or two. We're like, okay, is this the last year? And what are we thinking about so that we can get that admissions process started? I know that in our March parent conferences, there are going to be a lot of, okay, looking at, we've gotten into X, Y, and Z. What's our plan? So you've got the whole team, but we do have one person for the 8th grade transition process. And you always have Joanne to hold your hand through the process.
Any transition like
Yes.
that. Yeah.
And looking at what the supports the student really is going to need. And that's part, again, where Elise, myself, and the team really come together and look at, okay, this is our environment. This is going into a different environment. What are the supports that they really need to be successful that we automatically have, but want to make sure are provided for them?
Sure. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. We're just under an hour here, so that's pretty much perfect timing as far as I'm concerned. I want to thank you all again, Bill, Elise, and Joanne, for joining us this afternoon to talk about all things Villa. And for those of you who have attended, you'll be receiving a recording of the webinar if you want to rewatch it. Anyone who registered will receive that recording. And for more information, Elise and Bill, can follow up with you if need be. And do you have any other, do you have a closing comment, Bill? Would you like to share with us?
No, Christine, I just want to thank you again for hosting us today. And again, invite anyone on the webinar to come and just come and see us. I mean, whether or not you think we're the right program, we'll be very honest with you. And finding the right school for your kids is hard, and we understand that. So we welcome that conversation.
Thank you all so much for joining us this afternoon. Good night or good afternoon. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.